Hello everyone, back again with another video that I'm really excited to make because I learned so much from doing it. And so what this is this is basically an instructional tutorial video on how to configure FXO ports to ring to VoIP phones and be connected through Call Manager. And so inbound and outbound calls on a Cisco VoIP phone. Through analog FXO ports. And so this is the first time that I've had to configure something like this. So we have set up a remote office in Ecuador, and I had the immense pleasure of traveling to Ecuador and helping that get that office set up and ready with our equipment, and really enjoyed my experience there. But again, I've never had to configure FXO ports before, especially to work with VoIP phones, and then the integration with Call Manager. So the setup that we have there is a cube. We have a Ecuador cube router, and I think it's a 4321 router, ISR 4321. And we have installed a 4-port FXO port or card in there. And then we have 4 POTS lines coming into the building, and then those lines are connected into that FXO port or the FXO card. And then we have, well, right now I only have one phone there, one physical phone. The other phones are still getting through customs, but it doesn't matter. Well, as for testing, it doesn't matter because I can hook up a phone here and put it in the correct device pool and everything, and I can test, so it's fine. But unlike a T1 card, FXO cards do not need to be configured. It's kind of just plug and play. You do have to configure all the ports, but you don't have to configure the card itself. So a couple of the things that are very important configurations that I wanted to go through real quick in order to configure this card and the ports correctly. So we want to get into, and so I'm going to talk about this connection PLAR right here, and then the OPX. So there's 2 commands. There's, depending on what your setup is, it's either going to be connection PLAR or connection PLAR OPX. And I'm going to get into the card real quick so we can see that. So we go, and then we want to go to the voice port, and we want to go to the specific port, which is this one. So if we can also do do show run pipe 2 section voice port. We'll just do, oh no, that's right. I'm sorry. Voice port. And this will show us all 4 ports. And I don't have all 4 ports configured. I just have just the one for testing, because again the phones haven't arrived yet. And we can see this right here, this connection PLAR OPX. So what this is this was the key to all of it. I was running into some problems. Again, finding this information, some of it was really hard to find, some of it was just hard to interpret, depending on what the situation that I needed. And so I wanted to share this information in a really simple format. So PLAR stands for Private Line Automatic Ring Down. PLARs are used a lot in like elevators, or lobby phone or a service phone. So if you pick up a phone, it automatically rings another phone, right? The customer doesn't, or the person that has the phone doesn't have to dial at all. They just pick it up and boom, it dials a pre-configured phone. So this is kind of what's happening inside the router, and I'll explain a little bit. So what we want, so there's the private line. The connection PLAR. So if you were just going to use the connection PLAR command, that's like if you want to ring another FXS port, you would use connection PLAR and then an extension or a phone number. But we wanted it to go to Call Manager. We wanted to ring a VoIP extension, but in a off-site, a remote PBX, or remote Call Manager. So let's see where it's at. Yeah, the provision of an off-premise extension OPX from a private branch exchange. This is what we have. This is a useful tool for customers' requirements such as the provisioning of an offsite. So offsite premise, we were in Ecuador, and we wanted to ring the call manager, or a phone, an extension, but it has to go to call manager. Call manager finds the extension and then rings that phone. So we used, connection PLAR OPX right here is the command I put in, and then the extension. So 2302 is the extension I use for testing, and it works beautifully. Worked really, really well. And so that is the difference between connection PLAR and connection OPX. Connection PLAR, again, is just going to ring another FXS port, and connection PLAR OPX is going to ring a remote site or call manager, if that's your case. And in this instance, we wanted to ring, we wanted to go to call manager. All right. Signal. Okay, so is it going to be Loopstart or is it going to be ground start? Now, if you guys don't know the difference between Loopstart and ground start, go ahead and Google it. There's enough information on there. Or and I've kind of put some information here, but Loopstart is the default, and that's standard residential phone line. So Loopstart is most likely what you're going to use, unless you have some type of trunk, PSTN trunk or analog trunk or something. You're going to use ground start. So Loopstart again is set as default. So that's most likely what you'd be using. But there are instances where you would use ground start. Okay, the next one is, and also, if you notice on here, on this config, it does not show whether it's Loopstart or ground start. And so one thing that's really important is do show voice port. Yeah. So if we do well, again, I'm in do show voice port or just show voice port, it will give you all of the config of all the ports. So if we're looking right here, we have port 0/1/0, and obviously I haven't configured it, but it is up. I mean, I just haven't really done any other configuration. There are default configurations that are already set, obviously, and it will show us if it's ground start or loop start, and I'm trying to find it. It will show. I think it's just called signaling, and I'm sure you guys are going to find it and say, it's right there. It's right there, Woody, it's right there. Aha, here it is. Signaling type is loop start. So you can go in there and you can see, because there's lots of settings that you would, or lots of configurations you can do that will not show up on just the standard, if you do like show run. So just be aware of that. You will need to do a show voice port, and it'll take you to, or it'll give you a more detailed description of the configuration. Okay. So, supervisory disconnect, dual tone mid call. This is very important for disconnecting the call. When this condition is detected, so it's going to send a signal of 350 milliseconds from the switch. The system interprets this as a disconnect indication from the switch and clears the call. It says you should disable supervisory disconnect on the voice port if there is no supervisory disconnect, available from the switch. Typically, supervisory disconnect is available when connecting to the PSTN and is enabled by default. So there you go. It is enabled by default. So just be aware of that. So you may not have to do anything, but if you run into a problem, that's maybe somewhere where you should look. Okay, so the other one is CP tones. This one's really important as well. This command defines the detection of call progress tones generated at the local interface. It does not affect any information passed to the remote end of a connection, and it does not define the detection of tones generated at the remote end of a connection. So use the CP tone command to specify a regional analog voice interface related default tone ringing cadence. So this is really important, and I'm going to show you. We can see, well, I'll show you what this is here in a little bit. But if we go here and we type in CP tone and hit question mark, we'll see a list of countries. And so there's predefined frequency and cadence tones depending on which country is listed here. Ecuador is not listed here. I guessed, and I went with US, and it seems to be working fine. So if you know if the country's not on here and it's different than something else, you can manually put these tones in. And to do that, we can just look right here. So the command would be voice class custom CP tone, and then you name it whatever you want. And here's an example. You'll dual tone busy, and then you set the frequency and cadence, dual tone ringback, frequency and cadence, so on and so forth. You can set what you need, and then to add that, you would go to. It's actually, I'm sorry, you're not adding it to the dial peer. You're adding it to the voice port. So the command is voice port 0/1/2 or whatever it is, supervisory custom CP tone, and then whatever you had named it before. So again, so we're already in the port. So if we wanted to add this, it would be supervisory. Oh jeez, what is it? Custom, yeah, custom CP tone, and then whatever you named it. So again, right here, voice class custom CP tone, and then the word, and then obviously just to add it again, we're just adding it to the voice port. Supervisory custom CP tone, and then a word, whatever you named it. Okay. So on to the next. Oh, and this is a good website to go to if you're looking if you have to make your custom tones. Go to this website. You can pick the country, and then you can pick the tone, and it'll give you the frequency and the cadence. And I thought that was really cool. I stumbled across it. So that might be a good reference if needed. And I'll put that link in the comments or in the notes below. Okay, on to dial type. Dial type is specifies the tone type for the digit detection. So this defaults to Dtmf. So there's 3 options. Again, the Dtmf is the default, but if you're in an area that doesn't use that, then it'll have to be something different. Here, I'll show you right now. So let's switch over here to this screen. So if we dial type and we hit question mark, we can see Dtmf, MF tone dialer, and pulse. For Ecuador, I just had to use Dtmf, just the default, so it worked out really well. All right. Okay, trunk group. This was a little nice handy command. And what this does, an interface can belong to only one trunk group. Multiple interfaces can belong to the same trunk group. So we create the trunk group on the port, and then we can assign dial peers to those trunk groups. And then here's an example. So voice port 0/1/3, trunk group, trunk dash group, and then you can name it whatever you want, word, right? And then so I just named it FXO, and then on the dial peer, whatever dial peer you create, you can just add that dial peer to the trunk group. So notice trunk group, no dash, and then whatever word. And so you can have multiple trunk groups, but again, an interface can belong to only one trunk group, but multiple interfaces can belong to the same trunk group. And that's what I have. I only have one trunk group, and I have all my interfaces belonging to that trunk group. You just kind of see what it looks like. Trunk group, and you just name it. So FXO, right? So, and if we show run pipe 2 section voice port, no, shoot. We can see here trunk group FXO, and we can see what trunk group it belongs to. So that's nice. All right. Ring number. The ring number, this is a really easy command. The ring number command allows you to specify the number of rings that should pass before the router answers an incoming call on the FXO port. So the router will obviously answers that call first, and so what will happen is that let's say it's set to 3, and I think the default is 3, I want to say. And so it will, the customer, when somebody calls that number and it rings that FXO port, the router will answer, and it will ring 3 times before it passes that off into whatever device is connected to that FXO port, whether it's an analog phone or whether it's a VoIP phone. So the customer will hear it ring 3 times, and then it will ring. So we can go from 1 to 10 is the option. So I have it set to 1, so it'll ring once, and then it'll pass it on to the device. So, oopsie, ring, wow, sorry about that. Ring number, and 1 to 10, and I just have it set to 1. That's pretty easy to understand. But yeah, if you don't change that, I believe, again, the default is 3 on that. Okay, so on to dial peer configuration. Yeah, so because the incoming call is coming from the PBX into the FXO port, the router answers the call, right? We were talking about that. We want the incoming call to ring a VoIP phone that is connected to CUCM, and because we have set connection PLAR OPX, now I set it to 23, but this is just an example. If you set it to 2001, the router is going to dial out, and we need to create a VoIP dial peer for this. So again, my OPX, my connection PLAR OPX is 2302, but the dial peer is going to look pretty much exactly like this. So it's not going to be an incoming called number. It's going to be the destination pattern right here. So I'll show you what I have here, and I can just do dial P. I just have a shortcut there. Yeah, so if I'm looking for 5000, that's what I've named my dial peer voice, 5000 VoIP. Description, TV cable is the provider, POTS FXO in, destination pattern. And I just have just an extension, 4 digits. So I just have 4 dots. Session target, which is our CUCM. And then our Dtmf H245 alphanumeric, which we'll talk about, and then NOVAD. So this is just the dial peer that we need for incoming coming from the PBX into the FXO, because again, it's going to hit the router, and the router is going to dial out, right? So that's why we need this destination pattern, and then with whatever you have set up there. So this Dtmf relay H245 alphanumeric is important. These 2 methods are available. So you have alphanumeric, and you have the H245 signal. So these are only available for the H323 dial peers. This is an out-of-band Dtmf relay mechanism, so we basically need this in order for the Dtmf digits to be relayed properly. So that's pretty self-explanatory there. But yeah, pretty simple. So I have these other dial peers that I've created for it to work, because what I wanted is I wanted all local, long distance, and all international calls besides international calls going to the US. I wanted them going out the FXO ports, right? So and we have emergency services as well. And then there in Ecuador, they as well dial 911. So I have 2 dial peers for that. I have just 911, and then I have 9911 just in case and you can see 4 digits 3, just in case people are used to dialing 9 if they're in a hurry and they're a panic, and they're used to dialing 9 first and then 911. That it'll still catch, and that'll be covered. So right here is I have our local. Quito is the capital, and that's where it's located. It's in Quito. So all local numbers, which we can see here. Kind of zoom in here. Kind of hard to see. Okay, there we go. We have anything that starts with 2 through 9, and then 6 should be 6 digits after that. 2, 3, 4, 5, 6. So it's actually 7. So that's really what it should be right there. So because these are just you have the first 3 numbers and the last 4 digits, just like a local number here in the States or something. And so that's going to dial out just those 7 digits. And then the next one is long distance and cell phones. So all cell phones start with a 0, and all long distance numbers, anything outside of Quito, is going to be considered obviously long distance, and that starts with 0. And then actually, this is kind of silly. I don't need the 0 through 9. It's just a dot, which I have already changed, but in my notes I haven't changed that. So then we have any number that starts with 0 or 1, and then any number of digits after that will go out as long distance or cell phone out through this dial peer. And then this dial peer is for international calling. So 00, and then any number besides 1, so just 2 through 9, and then any string of digits after that, will go out this FXO port. And the reason I didn't want them to call for calls that are going to the United States, that I didn't want them to go out the FXO port, is because we just do like a TEJO, right? A tail end hop off here in the States. Because we have our CUCM, we just, if they need to call the States, they can dial a number in the States, and it'll just go out our routers from here. And then it won't be charged international calling off of those POTS lines in Ecuador, which will save money. And notice here that I have forward digits all on all of these, because we want it to send all the digits through. So don't forget about that. And so these are the dial peers that I've created. Obviously, your dial peers will be different. Do however you need to do them. But I did want to show in Call Manager, I have route patterns that look exactly like this to correspond, because what's going to happen, the phone's going to dial out. If an employee at the Ecuador office dials out, it's gonna first go to Call Manager, right? Call Manager is going to look at the route pattern. It's going to go through the route pattern, and then transfer it over to the cube in Ecuador, and the cube then is going to look at the FXO ports. So just make sure to have those route patterns as well, so that we can pass that off. Okay. Yeah, and this is just explaining what I had to do. Yeah, so all I had to do was put the HQ unrestricted partition in the Ecuador device CSS. This is what I've named them. This is what UR stands for, unrestricted. But calling search space, so when the IP phone that is in the Ecuador device CSS dials as a US number, it will go out the correct route pattern. So they don't have to dial 001 to dial out of Ecuador. You have to normally dial 001 is the US country code. And so they don't. They just dial the number as if they were in the States. So that's how I have it set up. Okay, the CUCM configuration checklist. I'm not really going to go into detail on that because it's so easy. But here is a checklist of what needs to happen: datetime group, region, SIP trunk, SIP profile, device pool, device. Then this is how I've set it up, and there's a couple ways to do it, but I have an MTP. All that, the partition, calling search space, route group, route list, route pattern, and then obviously create that H323 gateway along with it, so that those FX ports will function properly. Okay, I think that is it for this one. If you have any questions, go ahead and put them in the comments below. If I've missed something, let me know and I'll correct it. It's really not hard at all. But I had a wonderful time learning and figuring this out. Really enjoyed doing that, and then creating this stuff obviously for myself and for you guys as well. For if anybody like me who's searching for this and doesn't quite make 100% and needs a quick guide on how to do that. So again, leave any comments, and we'll see you next time. Thanks.